for President Trump. There will be a higher threat environment that the Secret Service and the other law enforcement agencies will have to navigate. So although they will have the same framework in place, that aspect that addresses threats, I imagine, I'm on the outside now, but I do threat management for a living. I imagine that will be expanded 2 or 3-fold.
Donald Trump's second inauguration takes place tomorrow, and for the first time in 40 years, it will be moved indoors due to low temperatures. Well, here to tell us what it takes to pull off a presidential inauguration, including the massive security operation, is Tim Gallagher, former FBI agent and current chief of security officer at the global investigations firm Nardello & Co. Tim, good afternoon. Thanks for giving us your time.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Is it a more difficult operation now for the security services moving this inauguration event indoors?
Sure, good question. Having been involved in this planning back in 2009 for the first Obama inauguration, we started with the Secret Service planning about 18 months in advance. That being said, there are contingencies, A, B, and C, right? So although all 18 months were focused primarily on A, B and C were also there, and B would have been to move indoors into the U.S. Capitol, the same venue where they have the State of the Union address every year.
And from what we understand, the capacity of that venue is around 20,000 people, yet hundreds of thousands are expected in Washington, D.C. Is the fact that you've got a whole bunch of people heading to an event that they can't actually attend, is that a worry for the security services?
Definitely something that's front of mind, right? You have hundreds of thousands of individuals travel from all over the country to go onto the National Mall to witness the inauguration. Now it's going to be indoors, with just a couple of thousand people let in, and then you have another venue, the Capital One Arena, a few blocks away, which you may, as you said, be able to get about 20,000 individuals in. And there's an awful lot of folks who are in town who would like to participate, who may not have an opportunity. And so law enforcement, the FBI in particular, this is the avenue that I would have been working on, is looking at what are these individuals doing, where are they going, and is there any ill intent or seeking to disrupt any of these venues which are not the official venue.
And Tim, will there be changes that have been made for Donald Trump's protection? We saw an assassination attempt happen, of course, during the course of the presidential campaign. 2, in fact, but one, of course, we saw shots fired and one person in the audience was killed. Has this changed the amount of security around Donald Trump?
Well, for starters, it changes security because there's been the assassination attempts. On top of that, now he's the president and he's not a candidate, which changed the protection package that is designated for those individuals. It was definitely stepped up after the first assassination attempt. The fact that this being moved indoors will make will make protection an easier tasking for the U.S. Secret Service, as they control the space. Outdoors, there are rooftops, there are crowds in the street, some of which may not be wanted, and that is not something that they will have to deal with under the current configuration. That being said, there were last-minute changes being made here, and the Secret Service and the other security agencies are going over that with a fine-tooth comb to ensure that some of these changes don't leave vulnerabilities.
Since January 6th, has the way of keeping those buildings and events like that in Washington, D.C. changed as well? Because January 6th, we saw security services overwhelmed at the Capitol building. So are massive crowds in Washington, D.C. now seen differently for not just the FBI, but the police and the Secret Service?
Without question. I live and work in Washington, D.C., and you could see it. On January 6th, you saw security forces overwhelmed, by protesters and a criminal act. On the 20th for the inauguration, 2 weeks later, when President Biden was sworn in, huge gates were up all over the District of Columbia. Buildings were boarded up, and that has become the norm for every large-scale event that has happened here in the District of Columbia since that day. High gates, Jersey barriers to prevent vehicles from going down street closures, It's the Secret Service and the police departments have definitely locked the city down.
You mentioned earlier that when you're a candidate, you get one protection package. When you're president, you get another protection package. Those protection packages, do they vary according to who's president, or does everybody just get the same amount of protection? I mean, is the Secret Service worried that Donald Trump perhaps is more vulnerable because of the state of politics in the US versus previous Republican presidents, for example?
Well, yeah, you're right. The protection package for the president is on paper is going to be the same. That being said, one aspect of that is threat evaluation and mitigation,
Mm.
and you evaluate the threats as they come in. And for President Trump, there will be a higher threat environment that the Secret Service and the other law enforcement agencies will have to navigate. So, although they will have the same framework in place, that aspect that addresses threats, I imagine, I'm on the outside now, but I do threat management for a living. I imagine that will be expanded two or threefold the amount of individuals who will be parsing through threats and putting together mitigation to ensure his safety as he moves about doing his presidential duties.
Tim, thank you for your time. Really good to speak to you. Tim Gallagher there, former FBI agent and current chief security officer at the global investigations firm Nardello and Co.